My town has rules you must follow, or else you'll join the vanished in the shadows. I never should have opened that door. It was just another Tuesday. The sun set early, painting the sky a bruised purple. I was on my way home from school, the chill in the air biting at my skin, the whispers of autumn swirling around me. The streets were empty, just the way I liked it. I liked to think of my town as cozy, old-fashioned. But something heavy tugged at the back of my mind. Everyone knew the stories. The vanished. People who disappeared just like that. One moment, they were here, and the next, poof. Gone. The first rule. Never ignore the signs. I used to scoff, roll my eyes. But that all changed last week that I walked past the old library, its windows fogged up like it was holding secrets inside. A chill ran through me. It felt wrong. Uninviting. The door creaked as if it were whispering, telling me to stay away. I should have listened. Then the sound started. Distant laughter echoed down the alley, eerie and distorted, like a broken record repeating the same haunting line. It made my heart race. I glanced over, feeling the prickling heat of a gaze, but the darkness swallowed everything around me. I tugged my jacket closer, wishing the shadows would retreat. Suddenly, a shuffling noise broke the silence. My blood ran cold. I turned, my eyes darting around, but nothing was there. Just shadows bending and twisting like fingers trying to reach out. I felt it then, the weight of unseen eyes, tracking my every move. My phone buzzed. A message from my best friend, Sarah. Did you hear about the old mill? My gut clenched. The mill. The second rule. Don't go near the mill after dark. I could still hear the terrified whispers of kids from school, telling tales of shadows lurking, of figures moving behind the crumbling walls. I shook my head, trying to push it away, but the chill crept deeper. As I took a step forward, a cold breeze rushed past me, carrying with it a scent of decay. I stumbled back, almost losing my balance. My heart hammered in my chest. I glanced behind me, convinced I'd see something. Someone. But the street was still, eerily quiet. Then, a heavy thud echoed from the mill. My breath caught in my throat. I shouldn't have been drawn in. But the curiosity was stronger, pulling me, luring me with its promise of mystery. The dares from my friends danced in my head. Are you scared? I cursed under my breath. The fear mixed with adrenaline surged through my veins. I took one last glance at my street, familiar yet foreign, the twilight casting long shadows. The mill loomed in the distance, its silhouette darker than the night around it. Against all my instincts, I crept toward it, heart racing, an undeniable compulsion gripping me tight, and then I heard it, a soft whisper, almost like my name, drifting on the air. My heart dropped. Someone was in there. I froze, the darkness whispering back, telling me to turn away. But something pulled me closer. The door to the mill stood slightly ajar. I hesitated. My breath felt heavy. Just as I reached for the handle, the wind picked up, slamming it shut. A scream erupted from the darkness inside, raw and filled with terror. My pulse stopped. I was too close now. Horror bubbled at the edges of my consciousness. I stepped back, the weight of dread settling deeper. Something stirred inside, the shadows shifted, and I could feel Ida's presence, waiting, watching. I turned to run, but before my feet could move, a figure lunged out from the darkness. My heart raced as I screamed. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The ground beneath me felt like a living thing, throbbing with the pulse of dread as I stumbled backward, my heart racing. The figure materialized, shrouded in darkness, but I could make out a gaunt face, eyes hollow and wide, gleaming with an otherworldly light. It was a face I didn't recognize, yet something about it sent a chill through my bones. The scream still echoed in my ears, but it wasn't just in my head, "Help me." The voice was a gurgle, choked with panic, twisting my insides with each plea that ricocheted off the mill's hollowed walls. I was rooted to the spot, torn between fleeing and the primal instinct to save. The figure approached, the shadows swirling around it like a cloak of despair. It reached out, its fingers contorting unnaturally, elongating as though breaking free from the limits of flesh. I staggered back, feeling the rough wood of the mill's siding pressing into my shoulder. I could taste the iron tang of fear at the back of my throat. "Please." It rasped again, the word wrapping around me, pulling me deeper into its trap. "You don't know what they're coming for. They're coming for you." I tore my eyes away from that dreadful visage, turning to bolt, but the darkness seemed alive, wrapping around my feet like chains. I kicked at it, feeling breathless, desperate. The weight of the town's history crashed over me, very story I'd ever heard made flesh in that moment. The vanished. The rules my peers had joked about, now looming like a specter, all too real. "Stay with me," the figure cried, its voice rising, desperation embroiling with fury. The ground shook beneath us, and I glanced back at the mill behind me, the very heart of the terror, its structure groaning as if it were awakening from a long slumber. Tendrils of shadow snaked out from its depths, grasping and curling like serpents, reaching for the figure cowering before me. I was entranced, caught in an inescapable web of terror. "What do you want?" I gasped, my voice cracking, dread flooding through me. "They want you," it hissed, anguish etched in its every syllable. "They want everyone. You have to." Suddenly, a piercing shriek erupted from the shadows, drowning out the figure's warning. Figures emerged, twisted forms swimming through the dark, their faces contorted in grins that sent waves of despair through my soul. Their limbs elongated, unnatural Islam and snake-like, moving with impossible speed toward me. Panic ignited inside me, sparking flight or fight instinct. I turned to run, but the moment my foot touched the ground, I was engulfed in darkness. A cold grip latched onto my wrist. The figure, it had a hold of me, pulling me back toward the mill. The laughter from the shadows grew louder, overlapping, a cacophony of derision echoing through the cold air. "Let go of me." I screamed, a surge of adrenaline propelling me to yank free. I stumbled, managing to break away, but in that split second, the shadows lunged forward, clawing at my heels. The world tilted, and I realized I was teetering on the brink of a chasm. The mill yawned before me, an abyss threatening to consume everything I was. "Don't look back." The figure shrieked. "You have to," but before it could finish, the shadows wrapped around it, pulling it away, dragging it back into the maw of darkness where screams resonated, each one tearing my resolve apart. That I turned and ran, pressing through the thickening mists of night, my thoughts spiraling with chaotic dread. All the warnings, all the tales wrapped around me like chains. I could still hear them, feel the laughter as I darted down the twisted alleyways leading back home. An unholy wind howled past me, blurring the edges of reality, drowning out my thoughts. I needed to get away, needed to escape. But the grip of the shadows felt like an insidious thread, weaving around my heart, pulling tighter with each desperate beat. With each step, the world fell away, the buildings abandoned, becoming mere silhouettes against the suffocating fog. I was lost. The whirling shadows danced around me, tauntingly filling the gaps between my breaths. Then I saw it, old library. Its doors loomed open, an invitation steeped in darkness. The sign above read "Knowledge awaits," but the words morphed into something sinister: "Knowledge claims." I hesitated only a moment before the shadows erupted behind me, forcing me forward, the urgency puncturing any hesitation I felt. As I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me, sealing my fate. The air was thick with dust and decay, the stories trapped within echoing and longing to be heard. My heart thundered in my chest, the whispers rising around me, rising like a tide swallowing the light. Join us. The words wrapped around me like a suffocating fog, drowning out the last remnants of hope. And just then, the ground beneath me trembled again, and I felt Ithans reaching from the darkness, pulling me down, sinking deeper into the shadows. My scream caught in my throat as the weight of every story, every warning, every harrowing tale converged on me, luring me further into the embrace of the mill, where no one would hear my cries. Then everything went dark, and I knew I was not alone. The silence that followed felt like a living entity, heavy and oppressive, pressing down upon me as I struggled to catch my breath. The last vestiges of light flickered like dying embers above, but in this shrouded library, light had become a distant memory. I stood too still, waiting for the shadows to reveal their secrets or perhaps transform into something far worse. Shapes loomed from the corners of the room, indistinct but palpably present, shifting like anxious phantoms. The overpowering scent of old books mixed with something rotten, something that suggested decay beyond the physical. As my eyes adjusted, passages became discernible, artificially lit manuscripts lining the walls, their words shimmering, as if the text itself were alive, waiting for me to pluck it from its confinement. Knowledge awaits echoed through my mind, taunting, like a sinister lullaby. With trembling hands, I reached for the nearest book. The leather binding felt warm, almost comforting. I pulled it from the shelf, and the moment it was free, the whispering grew louder, drowning out the drum of my heart. The title, obscured by grime, slowly revealed itself, The Vanished Whispers. My fingers itched with curiosity as I flipped it open, but instead of pages, the insides were hollow, resonating with a cold wind that seemed to blow from the depths of the library itself. "Please, don't read," a raspy voice tinged with despair whispered from the shelf beside me. I spun around to find an old woman, her face marred by a millennia of fears and secrets, her eyes two dark mirrors reflecting what had once been. "Help me," she pleaded, her mouth moving, but the sounds warped and twisted into guttural echoes. "They're coming back. They always come back." My heart pounded as an icy dread settled in my gut. Who's coming back? I sensed the shadows thickening, coiling around my feet like ropes. "The vanished." She gasped, lunging forward but held back by some invisible force, her outstretched hands trembling in agony. "They roam between the pages, twisted and waiting. Read the wrong thing, and you might join them." "Then what am I supposed to do?" I cried, desperately scanning the room for an exit. "Get out." Her voice cracked, urgency pouring from her desperate eyes. "But they won't let you go." An abrupt rush of wind swept through the library, knocking volumes from their perches, and in the chaos, I caught sight of specters forming from the books swirling through the air. Their faces were contorted in rage and despair, echoes of lives stolen, forgotten, faces unrecognizable yet painfully familiar, twisting in agony. "Run!" The old woman screamed again, straining against whatever held her captive. "They will come for your soul." I bolted back towards the door, but darkness churned in the corners, slipping closer, a ravenous storm. I half expected the door to be locked, but it swung open at my touch, revealing a suffocating darkness outside, an oppressive void that felt alive. I hesitated, my body trembling, heart racing. The whispers that had filled the library became a deafening roar. "Join us," came the haunting refrain, luring me to cross that threshold. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream erupted from the confines of the library, echoing through the corridors of my mind. I whipped around just in time to see the shadows swarm around the old woman, pulling her back towards the darkness, her cries shredding the breath from my lungs. "Help!" she wailed, her hands reaching out toward me as the void devoured her, and then silence fell once more, deafening in its finality. With that deafening reality crashing down upon me, I seized the moment, bursting through the doorway into the night. I was met with the disorienting fog that enveloped the town, streets twisted in ways I couldn't comprehend. The shadows were no longer confined to the library, they drifted around me like smoke, their cackles submerging my very breath. As I stumbled forward, the laughter merged into a chorus, each note sharp and filled with the weight of innumerable lost souls. My hand reached inside my pocket, fingers brush against the leather of the book I had taken, The Vanished Whispers. Then, without warning, a bloodied figure burst forth from the fog, its eyes two swirling orbs of darkness. "You took my story!" it shrieked, lunging at me, fingers outstretched, nails dripping with shadows, eager to drag me into their eternal night. No. I shouted, a surge of energy propelling me back towards the threshold of the library, the only refuge from the hell that awaited. But the figure crumbled into smoke, reforming, multiplying as they descended upon me. With no time left to think, I hurled the book into the mist, watching as it disappeared into the void. The shadows froze, their attention diverted momentarily, and I knew I only had seconds before they turned back to me. "Get out while you can!" I screamed at myself, racing back towards the library in trance, but as my foot stepped through the doorway, I felt a chilling grip around my ankle, pulling me backward into the abyss just as the last flicker of hope snuffed out, and in the shroud of darkness, I realized I was never meant to leave. My body slammed against the floor of the library, the cold stone solid beneath me. My heart raced, each beat echoing in the silence that settled like a thick fog after the chaos. I clawed at the floor, desperate to pull myself towards the sanctuary of familiar shadows, the weight of the abyss no longer surrounding me, but still hauntingly close. The echoes of the vanished lingered, their cries promising torment beyond reason. Breathless and terrified, I turned to look back through the doorway, expecting to see the bloodied figure lurking just outside, waiting to reclaim its prey. But instead, the night had swallowed it whole, replacing terror with a deep, unsettling quiet. I pushed myself upright, my surroundings twisting as the dust of the library sparkled in the dim light. Specters of my own fears danced mockingly. "Please, just let me go," I whispered into the void, feeling the desperation swell in my throat. It was futile, I knew, yet the notion of escape now drove me. The old woman's warnings echoed through my mind, a mantra haunting me with every thought. They always come back. But how? What was this place, tangled in whispers and shadows, that held both knowledge and damnation in its grasp? As I stood shakily, I took stock of my surroundings. The air felt heavier, pressing against my skin with a suffocating grip. The shelves loomed around me like ancient sentinels, familiar volumes now appearing coiled with life, each spine exuding darkness, each page a promise of despair. I hesitated, glancing at the tome I had dropped, at a thing of decay and whispers. Its presence felt alarming, as if it beckoned me to reach for it once more. Something deep inside me resisted, but a sudden breeze rose, stirring the dust and sending a chill coursing through my veins. What had I unleashed? Without warning, the lights began to flicker violently, the dim glow sputtering as if in response to something burgeoning from the depths below. Shadows elongated, stretching across the library floor, reaching for me with jagged fingers. A fear struck me sharper than any blade. I was not alone. From the very books themselves, forms began to emerge, distorted, morphing apparitions with twisted limbs and hollow eyes, their mouths stitched together in frozen screams. They slithered out from between the pages, a parade of the damned, condemned to endlessly search for the living. They flowed toward me, and I staggered back against the wall as the chilling realization set I would join the vanished if I didn't find a way to escape their grasp. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony, penetrating my thoughts, urging me to delve deeper into the library's secrets. "Remember us," they hissed. "You will feel what we once felt." No. I screamed against their insidious clamor, yet the sound felt lost, absorbed by the oppressive walls surrounding me. The shadows pulsed with energy, a living tapestry knitting itself tighter around me, and in my panic, I found myself staring at the nearest shelf, one densely packed with ancient, leather-bound tomes that seemed to vibrate with malevolence. A name flashed through my mind, a title I had glimpsed once before. I stumbled towards it, heart racing anew. "The Keeper of Secrets," it read. I knew I shouldn't open it, still, an unthinkable force motivated my trembling fingers. With each heartbeat intensifying, I reached for it, the leather cool against my skin, the whispers turning sharp and shrill. I yanked open the cover, and an unfathomable darkness erupted from within, coiling around me. The pages were blank at first, but they filled with images of faces, lost souls, some familiar, some terrifyingly alien. They gazed back, their eyes wide with horror, mouths opened in a silent wail just before the weight of their despair poured into me. Each moment grasped me tighter, dragging me further down into a void filled with dread. Visions of those taken the old woman, the figure in blood flashed before my eyes, a hellish parade of grief and loss. I felt myself sinking, pulling apart at the seams, becoming one with the shadows I feared. "Join us!" they howled in unison, their voices weaving into a horrifying symphony of degradation. And just as my will flickered and waned, the band of shadows lunged toward me, then darkness. No screams, no lightly a blend of past sorrows and futures unspoken. When time and space returned, I found myself back at the entrance of the library, standing on the precipice of that glaring doorway. The whispers had hushed, replaced by a breathless silence that thrummed with potential. "Congratulations," a voice echoed softly from behind, smooth yet razor-sharp, wrapping around me with a cruel familiarity. I spun, my heart threatening to leap from my chest. There stood the old woman, her figure restored yet hollow, a chilling smile twisting her lips. "You've brought them here." And the shadows began to move once more, coiling like serpents, eager, alive, drawing closer as my heart receded, a dance of anticipation and dread. "Welcome to the library, dear one. We never leave." You see, her eyes glinted with something ancient and knowing, the darkness swirling in her gaze promising not just horror but exploration of an existence unbound by earthly confines. And with every breath I took, I knew I had but one choice left. As they reached out for me, the only question that remained was whether I would join them willingly or be consumed against my will. The ground beneath me trembled slightly as if the library itself was alive, its ancient timber moaning and groaning under invisible pressures. "You've brought them here," the old woman repeated, each word draped in a velvet tone, sinister and seductive. As whispers crescendoed, they curled around me like smoke. The air thickened, a sweet, rotten stench seeping from the pages of the very books I had desperately tried to escape. Every part of me screamed to flee, yet my feet remained glued to the spot, paralyzed by dread and an unsettling fascination. Her eyes bore into mine, twisting my resolve, mining for the shame and guilt I harbored. Their clenching tendrils of darkness pulsed closer, grotesque mouths opening wide, stitched together like an abomination of the forgotten. I could hear them, the cries of my predecessors, those who had been lost within this cursed haven. "You shouldn't have opened what was left alone," they moaned. "Now we all suffer together." Every shadow within the library grew vivid with life, twisting into faceless figures that beckoned to me, urging me to take the next step into eternal obscurity. My heart ricocheted painfully against my ribs, each pulse a reminder that I was still, somehow, alive. "Why? Why did you have to call them?" "It's not enough to look for answers," the old woman spatted, a flicker of ire piercing her calm demeanor. "You wanted their knowledge. You wanted to learn their pains." In that moment of stark realization, I understood I had unwittingly become a part of their twisted desire for revenge against an indifferent world. The weight of their responsibility crashed upon me, and it ignited a primal instinct for survival deep within. I shook my head violently, willing the despair to leave me as I stumbled back, desperately seeking an escape route as I glanced around for a door, a window, anything that could free me from this nightmare. "Why, dear," she cooed, her voice now syrupy sweet. "You can never return. You're one of us now, bound by fate and the library's cruel design." The shadows coalesced, merged into one, advancing like a creeping tide, hungry and inexorable. The darkness thickened until it nearly drowned my senses, a mist carrying the taste of blood on the back of my tongue. I turned sharply, eyes darting among the shelves, grasping for something, anything, that would help me escape this quantum of dread. There. A glimmer of hope, a narrow staircase spiraling down into further depths, seemingly untouched by time. Without a second thought, I sprinted toward it, feet pounding against the stone floor as the shadows shrieked behind me, a hollow chorus of loss and longing. I felt their hands graze my shoulders, chill creeping into my bones. I threw myself down the staircase, unaware of the darkness closing in. The stairs twisted lower and lower, a dizzying descent further into the abyss. Wisps of smoke curled up from below, forming vague figures, a tragic ballet of those whose souls had been consumed before me. "You cannot escape," they cried. "You can only join us." In that instant, I understood the implications of the library's hunger. Each descent feasted upon hope, shattering it with every echoing footfall. I plunged deeper into the labyrinthine halls, driven by sheer terror to discover what awaited below. With a final push, I reached the bottom and stumbled into a room engulfed in darkness that it was a circular chamber lined with flickering candles, their flames casting a warm yet unsettling light across the damp stone walls. In the center of the room stood a small table, on which a peculiar object rested, a bell, ornately crafted with symbols that pulsated like a heartbeat. Rung once, you summon the shadows. Rung twice, you beckon the lost, a voice whispered from above. I was not alone, even in this secret haven. From every shadow more faces materialized, lost souls who had ventured beyond and were forever altered conduits bound to the library's willpower, their hollow expressions turned towards the bell, yearning and lamenting. Do it. Ring the bell. Bring them closer, they urged, a tide of desperate energy swirling around me. A bone-chilling realization washed over me. Bell's chime would either invoke liberation or seal my fate. The very shadows I had run from now waited with bated breath. Join us, dear one, they chorused, extending their hands as they floated closer. I hesitated. My trembling fingers hovered just above the polished surface. The air crackled with anticipation, the walls of the room seeming to close in, whispering promises of power, of truth, of unending knowledge if only I would dare to strike. But as the shadows tightened around me, I heard the old woman's laughter echoing back in my mind, a sound void of joy only meant to satiate the darkness. You have one chance. With a sudden surge of resolve, I grasped the bell and raised it high, the weight of destiny resting in my palm. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, and in that breath, I knew that whatever choice I made would not only define my fate but shatter the fragile balance of existence between the living and the vanished. And before I could make that choice, I felt a clammy, cold hand wrap around my wrist, pulling me hard from behind. You need not choose, a voice hissed from the shadows, frigid breath biting my neck. The library has already decided for you. And with the thundering chime of bells echoing through the darkness, my senses plunged into an abyss of unfathomable terror without knowing if I would rise to face my fate or be consumed by it forever. The echo of the bell reverberated through the chamber, and the walls trembled in response, as though awakening a long-dormant beast deep within the library's underbelly. The shadows surged, swirling like a storm unleashed, their whispers twisting into a cacophony of despair that melded with the jarring toll. With each chime, the darkness expanded, consuming the flickering light of the candles, snuffing the flames as if they were mere dreams, too fragile to survive the night. The icy grip around my wrist tightened, and I felt the breath of the shadowy figure at my neck pierce my very soul. You are not alone, yet you are lost, it rasped, its voice a tangle of every torment ever endured. You will never escape the shadows, child. They were born of your fears. Panic surged within me as I glanced around, the faces of the lost contorting in pain, their mouths moving in a ghastly pantomime, begging for a release I couldn't provide. Don't trust them, one of them howled, the library never gives what it takes. But the voice at my neck only chuckled low, darkly amused at the dread spreading across the chamber. Join us, it breathed again, and I felt tendrils of shadow creep along my skin, slithering and seeping, cold and unforgiving. The very nature of my being began to shudder at the invasion. My heart surged against my ribs, a desperate percussion urging me to break free. I raised the bell once more, trembling with fear and determination, but before I could decide my fate, another figure materialized from the shadows, disdain twisting its features into a disturbing grin. This spirit didn't speak, but I sensed its command as forcefully as if it had shouted. Don't ring it again, or you'll become one with the whispers forever. An electric tension stirred in the air. The shadows around me moved as though alive, glaring at the newest apparition, stalking hungrily as if torn between fear of its power and a ravenous desire for dominance. It seemed to understand the peril I faced, and for a brief moment, the whispers quieted, enveloping me in a suffocating stillness. Ring it thrice, it said, and you will bind their fate to yours. Become the vessel of their wrath and wisdom. The choice lay heavy before me: embrace the knowledge of the vanished or strive to flee from this dark inheritance I unwittingly invited. Ring it once for the shadows, the cold hand reasserted its grip. twice for the lost soul's plea. But the third, the figure leaned closer, and I could feel the chill seep into my marrow. The third bell's toll resonates with the library's true hunger. It hungers for blood-flesh life. In that deafening silence, I was torn between the allure of power and the gut-wrenching instinct to flee. The faces of the lost shimmered around me, a mournful procession of souls bound in sorrow, their eyes pleading. Striking the bell again felt like a betrayal, yet when I looked at them, I saw hope, the hope of someone, anyone, who could free them from what I would inadvertently become. Just as the silence threatened to suffocate me, the light around us flickered ominously, grasping for the shadows that encircled my being. I could feel the very fabric of reality fraying at the edges, as if the library was holding its breath, waiting for my next move. Then a sudden blaring thunderclap rang throughout the chamber, the walls shaking violently as a dreadful energy pulsed beneath the stone floor. With a terrible realization, I understood it wasn't my choice or my resolve that mattered anymore. The library was choosing for me. A wall of darkness erupted at one side of the chamber, twisting into a vortex of anguished cries and howling winds. Faces emerged, countless souls, their eyes wide with terror and madness, spilling out from the void in an unending stream. They clamored for a way out, reaching for the nearest living being, their desperation palpable and suffocating. Heed the call, the figures screamed, a blend of pain and urgency that clawed at every nerve in my body. I felt more than just fear, I felt the very essence of despair surrounding me like a shroud. Fated for oblivion or driven by a primal instinct to survive, I threw a desperate glance at the bell resting tantalizingly in my palm. To strike it again could unleash the storm of the ages, bind me to the shadows, to the library's insatiable hunger. But I had little time to choose. As the darkness erupted further, the cries morphed into a fervent chant, echoing around me, "Join us! Join us!" And as if answering their call, I raised the bell one last time, knowing that whatever decision I made would ignite a hell beyond any nightmare I had ever borne witness to. With one final breath, I brought it crashing down, and the room shattered into chaos. The bell's shriek pierced the air, a haunting wail that echoed with the weight of ages. The very foundations of the library convulsed beneath me, the ominous throes of countless souls awakening in response. Bright flashes of darkness consumed the chamber, twisting and turning like an angry tempest. The vortex of souls screamed, their faces twisting in agony, a whirlpool of torment and despair. That I staggered back, heart racing, feeling the malevolent force surge at my command. The shadows convulsed violently, interested in my every heartbeat, weaving themselves into twisted figures, some more solid than others, their eyes glowing with vengeance and anguish. They hesitated, perhaps unsure whether to embrace me or devour me whole, as I felt the room shift around me, a nightmare out of control. My child, the silhouette that had tugged at my wrist cooed, its voice a seductive mixture of longing and menace. "You've awakened us. Now, witness your rebirth. Become the tether between our worlds. We will save you, if you allow us to drain the very essence that binds you." Its outstretched hand beckoned, shadowy fingers curling, an invitation or a summoning. I swallowed a scream that threatened to break free, adrenaline sparking within my system. There was no turning back. The shadows threatened to reclaim every ounce of hope left within me, drawing tighter with every passing second. But something stirred deep in my psyche, a lingering memory of laughter, of warmth, of life before this harrowing descent into darkness. "Don't trust her." The distant voice of the lost had echoed, frayed with desperation. "Each scream you hear is a fragment of your soul you'll never reclaim." The shadows danced dangerously close, their palpable energy a malevolent pulse underscoring every syllable. One by one, the faces of the lost flickered before me, drawing nearer, once familiar, now unrecognizable, twisted by grief, some bursting forth with renewed vigor, their hands stretched, seeking salvation. Their pleas became a cacophony that shook the air around us, a relentless attack on my sanity. Suddenly, the screams and murmurs morphed into something else, something more sinister. "You cannot escape your fate," they hissed in unison, laughter bubbling forth, sharp and bitter. The sound gnawed at the edges of my mind like a dark echo of everything I feared. As I hesitated, the chilling wind howled through the library, slamming books from the shelves and scattering dust like tiny phantoms swirling in the air. I stepped backward, stumbling until I collided with a towering stack of tomes. They toppled like dominoes, crashing to the floor as the squalling tempest intensified. I was at the eye of a storm, unmoored amidst the shadows. Let them speak. The sinister figure commanded, raising its arms in a mocking salute. Let them guide you. They know all, feel all, and they wish to share their secrets with you. In a last flicker of defiance amidst my spiraling dread, I strained against the venom coursing through me. No. I refuse. The rejection rang out like a beacon, igniting a flicker of hope in my heart. But the library roared in response. I felt the walls come alive, the air crackling with an agitated energy as shadows clung desperately to the floor like web-like tendrils seeking prey. The ground quaked suddenly, a violent rumble shaking the very core of the library. Where once stood bookshelves, gaping chasms began to open, revealing a deeper darkness swirling within, beckoning as if to swallow the remnants of reality altogether. The howls of anguished souls crescendoed into a near-deafening roar, drumming against the walls and invading my mind. No. I will not join you. My heart thundered, yet paradoxically, temptation lingered. An urge to surrender to the shadow's embrace fluttered dangerously close, brushing my consciousness. Then suffer the consequences. The voice slithered, laden with disdain. The shadows converged upon me, pushing me towards the gaping maw of darkness. The faces of the lost surged in contempt, their shadows elongating, merging, twisting as they reached for me in a malevolent harmony. Suddenly, from that dismal void, shrouded in darkness, a familiar figure began to materialize, the spectral visage of a loved one, their features etched in agony, eyes wide with a mixture of recognition and horror. You must resist, they managed to whisper, their lips barely forming the words. Heed the wisdom of the lost. But before I could comprehend, the figure stretched their hand toward me, and in that instant, the darkness howled. A surge of energy ripped through the chamber, illuminating the specters, revealing all the agonizing entrapments of the library. My loved one's face twisted, melding with the other lost souls, their form disintegrating into a horrifying collage of terror, filling the void the shadows yearned to claim. Amidst the fear and chaos, I stood on the precipice of a choice. The bell lay glimmering in my hand, beckoning. Would I toll the final ring or allow myself to be consumed by the ancient darkness? The room spun, shadows reaching toward me like a coiling serpent, and the haunting cries morphed into a singular, desperate whisper, choose or be chosen. And just as I felt the pull of the abyss wrapping around me, I closed my eyes tightly, steeling myself to confront the horror. Desperation clawed at me, and in the sickening silence that erupted, I made my move. But the last sound that struck my ears as I acted was not my own voice. It was the sickening crack of Bonisa, haunting reminder that some ties could never be severed. The air was thick with a suffocating silence as I braced myself for what lay beyond my eyelids. When I finally pried them open, the library had transformed in my absence. The fluid shadows still coiled around me, but now they were more pronounced, pressing against my skin as if testing my corporeal limits. The shelves had disintegrated, and brick and mortar were replaced by a nightmarish labyrinth of endless, swarming darkness. The bell still trembled in my hand, its resonance melding with the bass thrum of presence thickening around me. Welcome to your reckoning, a voice teased, sultry and wet like the drip of something unholy. The silhouette emerged like a dark bloom, its form twisting as it danced closer, drawn by the bell's flickering light. It wore the face of a friend, someone who had vanished years ago, swallowed by the town's unending cycle of despair. You were never meant to leave, they purred, eyes gleaming with malice and buried sorrow. The familiarity was a shroud of dread, a gossamer veil thin enough to rip but heavy enough to crush. Get away from me! I shouted, though it emerged as a feeble whisper, my once loud resolve shrinking under the crushing weight of my surroundings. The shadows churned, insatiable, hungry for fear. They fed on it like wretched beasts, eyes glinting with a lust for my essence. You think you can escape the town's curse? You walk the same cobblestones that devoured us all. Those who vanish join our chorus. Our lament is symphonic, a melody woven with your own heartbeat. The voice sang, each word crawling through my veins, sending ice through my core. Suddenly, the reflection of myself flashed in the figure's eyes, a ghastly image distorted and grinning maniacally. The shadows whispered secrets, suffocating truths I had buried, something about the town, the rules that both kept it alive and wounded its heart, don't you see? You're one of us now, it continued, this puppet of despair, its movement hypnotic in the flickering gloom. You hold the key yet refuse the lock. Sacrifice for salvation. Before I could respond, a tremor rippled through the space, splitting the ground beneath me. The shadows converged, tightening around my ankles, threatening to drag me into the void below. With desperation, I fought against the binding tendrils, my fingers brushing against the books that now lined the floor, a collection of shattered tomes, each with a title engraved in dark gold, their pages emptier than hollow shells. Then, in the chaos, I noticed one volume that glimmered subtly in the dark. It was so small, nestled beneath a crumbling statue of a weeping woman. The spine read, The Forgotten Laws, a Guide to Our Town's Mysteries. My breath caught in my throat. With a surge of adrenaline, I wrenched myself free and lunged for it as spectral hands reached for me, grasping, pulling, trying to drag me back. The faint whispering of desire turned to howls as I snatched the book, feeling its coldness seep into my palms. You dare. The anguished face of my friend sneered, transforming once more, the love once etched into its features now twisted into something abominable. You'll find nothing but despair within those pages. That knowledge will only accelerate your demise. Undeterred, I flipped the book open and was met with dizzying inscriptions that swirled and flickered alive. The shadows throbbed, contorting as if enraged by my defiance. The pages blurred together, but one passage broke through, a chilling summation of warnings: to resist is to be consumed. The town demands its toll and will take without mercy. Each soul lost adds to the shadows. You, too, must pay or join the chorus of the vanished. With each line, realization seared into my mind like a branding iron. The darkness surrounding me shifted and elongated, drawn to my flickering resolve, pulsating in a malevolent rhythm. Its very essence was hungry, a beast waiting in the dark for the moment I would expose my weakness. That I and the chaos, the shadows unleashed their fury, slithering like smoke, shifting shapes around me, crushing the remnants of my defiance. I felt an insatiable pull toward the book, a seduction all its own, laying bare my greatest fears and desires. As I fought to hold on to the last vestiges of my sanity, I heard disembodied voices echoing sadistic laughter, mingling with spectral sobs. Reality distorted, the phrases within the book morphed, condemning me, abstractly painting a portrait of my future. Then came the laughter, sharp, discordant, and deafening. The ground beneath my feet began to collapse, swirling into the abyss of despair that was my potential fate. In that moment, when time held its breath, the shadows paused, crystallizing into figures of the lost faces I recognized but had long forgotten, and among them, my own morphed visage smiled at me, a malevolence birthed in anguish. The gripping charcoal of night stretched, eagerly unveiling the final choice laid before me. Would I accept the book's taunts, or succumb to the shadows and their treacherous whispers? Just as the horror climaxed around me, everything snapped into focus, the air electric with anticipation. And then I heard the resonating toll of the bell, a foreboding conclusion to my wavering resolve, signaling that the reckoning was upon me. A split second later, the lights flickered, plunging me into complete darkness. In that consuming void, a breathless whisper lingered, chilling: welcome home. Then, silence. The silence was unnerving, an oppressive weight pressing down upon me, deeper than the darkness that engulfed my surroundings. My heart pounded wildly, echoing in my ears like a desperate drum, urging me to break free from this hall of despair. Yet the shadows fluttered around me, entwining like the serpent in the garden, whispering sinful secrets of promises rarely kept. Instinctively, I clutched the book to my chest, its spine biting into my palm as the only source of something tangible in the void. The shadows, sensing my fleeting courage, swirled and stretched outward like tendrils, desperately searching for a weakness to exploit. I whispered incantations from the fragments I could recall. Yet, with every syllable, the whispers intensified, mocking me, saturating the air with a ghastly symphony of lies. Futile, the whispers crescendoed, a cacophony blending into one primordial scream. The darkness thickened further, constricting my chest, and I gasped for breath, the damp air tasting of mold and memories better left buried. I stumbled, my hands reaching out blindly, seeking a foothold in the chaos as desperation deluged my spirit. Then I felt a soft touch against my cheek. A fleeting brush of something icy, drawing me back to the silhouette that had tormented me moments earlier. Do you need guidance? Or perhaps a gentle hand? It cooed, its voice slithering into my consciousness like poison. You have wandered so far from the path, my dear. One small decision will ease your plight. That I recoiled, my throat constricting with panic. Get away. But even my own voice placed doubts in my mind, as if the shadows had seeped into my lungs, shaping my thoughts into tormented echoes. The haunting figure laughed, the sound piercing through the shroud of darkness. You think your refusal can alter destiny? The town demands a sacrificial blood pact. Maybe even your own. Are you strong enough? Or will you yield, surrendering yourself to the night? The oppressive shadows pulsed, tightening their hold as if they craved the very essence that made me alive. As I stood paralyzed, visions began to flicker in the engulfing dark, a montage of faces twisted in anguish, long-suppressed memories threatening to drown me in their tidal waves. They were the vanished, their eyes hollow shells, mouths gasping silent screams for liberation, and I could feel their pain clawing at my very soul. Then, just when the horror reached its zenith, a blinding light crackled to life in the distancia, beacon flickering with agonizing brilliance amid the suffocating shadows. Hope surged within me, igniting a fire I thought extinguished long ago. Fleeting, the voice hissed amid the turbulence of the darkness, it's merely an illusion. The light beckons you to folly. But what awaits in its embrace is worse than your worst nightmares. That I clenched my teeth, the shadows squirming around my feet, elbows like spectral bars tightening against my sides. With newfound determination, I plunged toward the light, each step countering the pulls of despair that clawed at my back, a sprint against the very fabric of dread. As I drew closer, the light expanded, revealing a gateway, a rift of glowing silver beneath a canopy of swirling shadows. A pulsating beat thumped like a heartbeat, seemingly resonating with my own. My breath hitched, a heady mix of fear and anticipation flooding my senses. Fool! The voice shrieked, rising high above the murmuring shadows, you run towards your own undoing. You cannot escape the necessary toll. With a final surge, I crossed the threshold, the air flickering violently around me, limbing the edges of reality from the writhing layers of darkness. The shift was catastrophic, a violent storm clawing at the edges of my mind as I staggered into a blinding kaleidoscope of color, suffocating the night with a riot of brilliance. But as quickly as the colors erupted, they twisted and writhed, morphing into nightmarish landscapes. Each scene was a desolate echo of the town I had known, familiar and yet grotesque, colors burned with an acidic hue, a world caught in some eternal twilight that mirrored the horrors I had just escaped. And there, towering in the distance, a familiar figure emerged. Drenched in shadow, yet pulsating with a beguiling light, the mayor, or what remained of them, known long ago as a respected leader, now a figure entwined with the very essence of the town's curse. Welcome, they greeted, their voice morphing between cadence and chaos, you have passed through the veil. But your journey is just beginning. Will you join the ranks of the vanished, or will you find the strength to confront what awaits? The shadows will answer soon enough. Just as I prepared to respond, the ground quaked violently, and nightmare shapes surged from the rift, stretching out toward me with clawed hands dripping with despair. That I felt invasive memory creep around my heart, my fear, the choice, the toll was coming due. A bone-chilling thought formed in my terror-stricken mind, was this my end, or merely the inciting spark of an even greater horror? As darkness swelled around me once more, laughter broke through the crashing waves of despair, an echoing promise mingled with my name, and then, beneath the cacophony of voices, I heard it, my own voice fused with the whispers that filled the air. Join us. The rift behind me closed in a blinding flash, leaving only the clawing void to embrace me. With a final scream echoing against the wind, the laughter morphed into a single question that pierced through my very core: what will you sacrifice to survive? The heaviness of the air pressed against my chest as I stood at the center of the endless, twilight-shrouded landscape. The distance felt infinite, the shadows swirling at my feet whispering secrets woven into the very fabric of existence. It was as though the ground beneath me was alive, pulsing with hungry anticipation, awaiting my decision, a decision that loomed heavier than any phantasm I had ever faced. The specter of the mayor shifted before me, remnants of authority and power twisted into something grotesque and terrifying. "You thought you could escape?" they taunted, eyes gleaming with the madness of the vanished. "We are the stories, the memories of this town, and now you are one of us." A chill crawled down my spine, yet I felt a flicker of resistance igniting in the pit of my stomach. The shadows tugged at my ankles, dragging memories from my past, faces of friends I had lost, laughter turned to cries of despair echoing through the fading light. "No!" I shouted, clenching my fists as defiance bubbled to the surface. My heart hammered. If I were to become lost among them, then I would face it with the defiance of my soul. "Choose, child," the mayor sighed. "Join our ranks, become a keeper of the shadows, or be consumed. Your fear is what fuels this town, it can nurture you or lead to your undoing." With each word, I felt myself unraveling, memories flooding my mind, me friendships, the warmth of the sun on my face, moments wrapped in the ordinary comforts of life. Here, in this abyss, they felt distant, almost mocking. "I won't let you take me!" I screamed, my voice echoing, splintering as it ricocheted around me. "I won't become another whisper," the shadows around me roared, a terrifying cacophony, as horror twisted my vision. I shifted my gaze downward, the ground beneath me pulsating like a living organism, its surface rippling with a dark essence that felt like a snare tightening around my heart. If fear fed this place, I would channel anger, the very essence of my humanity. "I am not afraid," I shouted, each word resonating as I drew upon the strength of my intentions, fighting against the chains of despair and manipulation that sought to bind me. Unfurling fury surged through my veins as I stepped forward, the shadows reacting, recoiling as I trespassed deeper into the heart of the abyss. "You want a sacrifice?" I called out. "Then let it be my fear, let it be my pain, but not my soul. I choose strength." With those words, light exploded from within me, a brilliant radiant flare that surged against the consuming darkness. The shadows writhed and screamed, contorted in agony as I pushed against them, forcing my will into the air. The ground cracked, sparks igniting the stillness, illuminating the horrific truth around. Mayor's form shattered, fragmented into countless lost souls spiraling upward toward the light I had become. "Foolish child!" the mayor's voice bellowed as the fragments swirled around me, an amalgamation of every shadow, every lost connection my life had known. "You think your light can extinguish the darkness? It's only a flicker." But even as the shadows thrashed, I could feel a flickering hope invigorating me, burning brighter and brighter. I had not come this far, had not faced the horrors of this twisted town, to let despair snuff out that flicker. I thrust my hands forward, feeling a connection with the flickering momentum, letting the flames of righteous fury pour from my being, erupting through the darkness like the sun reclaiming the horizon. "Your time is over," I roared, and as the light surged, I sensed the shadows begin to retreat, not just from me but from the hollow essence that they had woven into the very fabric of this town. The ground convulsed once more, but now with liberation rather than destruction. I felt the lost souls surge with me, a symbiotic liberation as our cries intertwined, breaking the chains that had held them prisoner for too long. But just as I believed my triumph would remain, the whispers coalesced one last time, forming into a figure that lunged toward me, eyes blazing with rage and despair. The figure of the old woman. "You should have joined. You could have been among us," she shouted, fury lacing every syllable. "Now you will pay the price." In that moment, a flicker of recognition surged through Meher's face, mirrored every fear I had battled, every moment I had doubted. "You're wrong," I breathed, faint against the chaos surrounding us. "I will not be a vessel for your hate. This town is freed by love and strength, not despair." And with a final surge, the waves of light crashed against the shadows, consuming them, wrapping around the old woman as her cries melted into unwelcome silence. One by one, the specters surrounding me began to pulse with the same radiant warmth I felt. "All those who go will rise anew," I whispered, and with one last surge of determined harmony, the light exploded, cleansed the shadows of their grotesque mockery, and freed the souls lost to their haunting grasp. But just as silence enveloped me, the haunting truth struck: this was not an escape. The light, while purifying, did not eradicate the horror. The town, the cycles of the vanished, still roiled just beneath the surface, a festering wound hidden beneath the brightness of newfound hope. It was clear then, as I stood amidst the rising spirits of the liberated, the shadows would lurk, would always seep into the fragile cracks of humanity and delight in doubt. As the whispers died down, I turned to the horizon, heartbeat echoing the truth rising within me. I will remember, I vowed, knowing the dark pulsing of knowledge would remain, that I would face the horror of it all anew, every day, for the rest of my life. For not every horror is vanquished, and darkness is forever an insatiable companion. In that moment of unyielding realization, as warmth washed over me, I felt the final chilling echo seep into my bones, reminder that to live is to always dance with shadows. And as I stepped away from the library's grasp, the lingering words twisted through the air, leaving an indelible mark on my mind, until the next whisper calls.